Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to have you here tonight. And thank you for Mark Pitstick for doing all these amazing interviews. And I think you're in for a real treat tonight. We have some amazing speakers. So, our mission statement: Helping Parents Heal is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting bereaved parents to become shining light parents by providing support and resources to aid in the healing process. We go a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and evidence for the afterlife in a non dogmatic way. Affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non religious background, and allow for open dialogue. Attendance today at the Helping Parents Heal meeting is voluntary, and we are here for the benefit of learning from and sharing with other parents whose child has passed away. It is understood that our discussions are intended to be confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. However, these Zoom meetings are very healing to parents all over the world, and they are all posted on YouTube so that affiliate members who are not in our time zone can also watch. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers to allow parents to be informed about many possible ways to heal, to connect with their children, and to learn about the afterlife. The views expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect those of Helping Parents Heal, and we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. So, welcome, everybody. We're glad you're here.
Yes, welcome everyone, and you are going to have a wonderful evening. I can guarantee it. How do we know? Because it's happened all the other 15 times we've done this. So you're going to meet four amazing shining light parents. And the definition of that is parents who have gone through the dark night of the soul, gone from primarily identifying themselves as bereaved and grieving and feeling the sadness and anger and self-blame and all the emotions that understandably can accompany when a child passes, and moving into then focusing, feeling much more peace, joy, acceptance, and love and serving others. And each one of them is serving others. They have amazing stories to share. I recommend that you listen closely, learn from them how they did it, and that will give you tips how you can do the same. By the way, the fact that they moved into being shining light parents doesn't mean their lives are perfect. They may still get triggered during anniversaries or special um, events, but for the most part, they are at those high levels. So to learn more about that journey, you can see my article number 82 at soulproof.com about journeying toward being a shining light parent. Now, there are a number of, before we start the interviews, there are a number of resources that we want you to know about. And so those are available on the helpingparentsheal.org website. And then if you go to the top tab that says YouTube videos, and then the first one in the list says affiliate leader and caring listener interviews. So again, helpingparentsheal.org website /YouTube videos /affiliate leader caring listener interviews. And on that page, you'll find all the interviews that have been done so far, so you can watch them, how to find a group near you if one exists, to learn about the caring listeners. We have about 35 of those shining light parents who, at no charge, will talk with you, share what helped them. Very powerful. I started that group years ago and provide clinical support. You'll see their calendar of online events. There are events almost every evening, extraordinary ones, so you can attend. There are 4 free experiential sessions of mine on videos, and the ones that are most useful for parents: holistic breathing, facilitated after-death contact, pre-birth planning, and the Ask Your Soul, God, and Angels technique. So take advantage of those. Also, the most commonly recommended articles and that I wrote, again, at soulproof.com. And then finally, a link to the radio shows I created where I interviewed all these top experts and ask them the toughest questions. Who are we? Why are we here? Is there a God? If so, why is there so much suffering, etc.? So again, lots of resources. And then finally, if there's anything else you need, reach out to us. We're here for you. We are very glad we'll provide the resources. So we want you to know you're not alone in this. We will get you what you need to make this happen. So with that in mind, let's start with our first interviewee, and that is Beth and Rick. And tell us, please, about your children, Jessica and Joshua, their lives and their passing. And they're muted.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, Jessica and Joshua were our two children. They passed in 1999. We're coming up on 25 years for us this summer. Jessica was 9, Josh was 7. On a Sunday afternoon, there was a drunk driver that ran through a red light at over 80 miles an hour and broadsided our minivan. We lost, both kids were gone within 30 minutes or so, and we somehow survived. We had just moved from the place that they were born to a new city for a job, and so we'd only been there a month. And we began to work to put our life back together. And our kids, we have now understand, and looking back within the first year as well as since then, we understand that our kids were put here to help us get into a position to be able to help other people, and they continue to help us from the other side with that.
Tell me, we have a little more time than usual because just 4 of you this evening. Were there any signs, especially looking back, that now you can see that they may have been more evolved souls, perhaps didn't have to do a long earthly experience?
Right away, I shouldn't say right away, but Josh, I think, was 3 years old, 4 years old. And I said to Rick, I'm like, Josh is going to die early. I said, he's not on this earth for a long time. I said, I believe he's an old soul. And you always thought I was just a nervous mom. And I said, no. I said, look at his ears. He's an old soul. He has big ears, so he's not on this earth for a long time. So I tried everything to keep them safe. We'd had a great fire safety plan, rescue, if they're playing at a friend's house, there was a gun, just get out of there. I did my best to try to save them. So I had that inner knowing that I was going to lose Josh. Did not know I was going to lose Jessica. You also thought they were commenting, like Josh said.
Yeah, there was some comments, and we look back, Josh, about a month before the kids passed, he told us, he said, I'm really going to miss this place.
Well, we had moved, but we were moving, but Rick was like, I think it was deeper than that.
Right.
Yeah.
And just the way that our kids were able to connect with others and the effect that they had on others, we knew that they were old souls. They were always looking out for other people, other children, and trying to keep their thoughts or their feelings in mind and how they could help them, even, at the ages that they were.
Excellent. Thank you. That is so common. But I've got to double back to this big ears means they're an old soul thing. I've never heard that. You blew my mind.
Well, as older men get older, or as men get older, their ears get bigger. So I don't know. It was just something I had felt. I've always have had inner knowing, and
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, to the book team,
how I
don't put that
explained
in the
it.
book. Right, so
It is
tell
in
us,
the book.
how did you initially learn about helping parents heal, and how did they help you?
Well, I think that you know, when they passed in 1999, there was no Helping Parents Heal. So we were on our own. I did have eBay. I did buy a lot of stuff that helped. But it was the first conference was what, 2017?
2018.
2018. And I had a friend of mine who saw about the conference and she messaged me and she said, "Are you going to be there?" And I didn't even know it existed. So then I looked into it and reached out to Irene because I saw so many wonderful mediums were involved. I said to her, "You have a lot of mediums, but you have no shaman healers. You don't have any healers being there. Would you like to have a shaman healer?" So we arranged that. She had a healing and then we were at the first conference. So that's kind of how we found out about Helping Parents Heal.
And we spoke at the conference and did healings all throughout the conference. And our association with Helping Parents Heal has always been from the standpoint of what can we do for them? What can we provide? Because we were very far along in our own journey at that point. And the resources that Helping Parents Heal provide is immensely helpful. Looking back, we wish we would have had that during the time that we went through, but at the point we're at in our journey, how we are associated with them is in a helping capacity.
Okay, so tell me next, please, how you're serving other parents and what do you consider to be the strengths of how you do that?
Well, we are affiliate leaders. Beth is the one that runs the group in Milwaukee area. We speak at the conference. We've done a number of talks on Helping Parents Heal on the large group. We've done some also, besides talks, we've led some group healings or meditations for the large group. We've spoken to some of the affiliate groups, some in person, some through Zoom. We make ourselves available to people that just need somebody to talk to on the phone or in person in some cases.
Great. Anything else you want to add about that, Beth?
We just like that we can offer some help. A lot of people, when they hear that we have lost 2 children, their first reaction is like, "Oh my gosh, I've lost one." So just, I don't know if that makes, there's never a comparison, but I think that even gives them a little bit of hope that if we got through losing 2 children, they can get through the one. So I just enjoy speaking with people. They literally can call me if I can give them any shining help or just another ear to listen to is my favorite thing to do.
And we've had 3 children since then, so we were able to put our life back together and continue on. And we have seen that helps, that gives people hope, that there is a way that you can move forward from the loss that we suffer from our children passing on.
And it is kind of cool that since we've met quite a few couples that have had more children and they're like, because you could do this, we could do this. So that is kind of neat that, people are actually looking at us as an inspiration and being able to have more children if they can.
Okay. Now, the next question is about sensing your children's presence. And so I'd like to hear how that was for you initially, and then 25 years later, how has that changed, please?
Go ahead.
All right. Well, I've always, since, I don't know, I was 25, I started dreaming of this, a friend of mine who had passed. So I do dream of dead people. And so that was very interesting to be opened up to that. And so after Jess and Josh died, they started coming to me in dreams instantly and talking to me. So I've always have kept a dream journal. They help me, they give me great little advice. They helped us have more children when it was time to have children. So I think that's very, very helpful. I don't dream about them as much. I just feel them now more. I can always tell when they're present. So, but Rick, a little bit.
In the beginning, our kids were instrumental in putting people in our life to be able to put us on this path that we're on. And these other people told us, your kids came to me, or I saw your kids. And so there wasn't only us, it was other people. As the time has gone on when I do healings, shamanic healings with people, my kids will come in and help do the healings. And in fact, there's times when the people I'm working with, they will describe my children or our children. They've seen them during the healings. And so they are very powerful spirits. We know that from our own association with them and from other people that have met them on the spirit side, and they're there to really just help us work with other people. And so I feel them when I'm doing healings. They'll show up every now and then in the house and make themselves known, or different places that we're at. And so it's transition from, when you first lose your children and when they first cross over, you want that contact with them so desperately, because you need to understand and you need to know that they're okay and they're safe, that they're still there. And so for us, it's transition from that type of an experience that every parent goes through to one of reassurance that they're pulling things together for us as we move forward, and that they're available to help us when we're working with other people. So it's for us, at least for me, it's been a beautiful transition to work with them now, not as our kids that have crossed over, but as kids that are on the other side, lending this assistance to us.
Who are actually eternal souls, and as you say, quite evolved ones. I have seen that to be one of the biggest shifts parents can make in their healing, to not just limit their kids, think of them as like little helpless kids for eternity, and what are they going to do without mom and dad, just saying, wow, we were blessed to have these advanced souls in our presence for how many years, and now we're keeping in touch with them and so proud of what they're doing. So what are 3 things you've learned, and you can do 3 each if you want, over the years that you'd like to share with others watching this?
You want to go first?
No, you go first. I got to think about it.
The biggest thing that when we talk with people, is this sense of understanding that your kids are not gone. They have just transitioned to a place. You have to, one of the ways I describe this to people is that it's like you got a letter from a friend, or you're a friend of yours, you're talking to a friend, and he says, I'm moving to the other side of the world, and there isn't going to be any cell phone coverage. There's not going to be any mail. Every once in a while you're here for me. You won't be able to connect with me, but I'm still there. That friend, after they move, is still available and alive. You just can't reach out and connect with them. And that's what it's like when you make this transition with your kids, is that they are still there, but you just have to learn to connect with them in a different way and learn a different language. And this sense of this stuff happens for a reason. We were given numerous signs about that. And when you go through this process of beginning to understand that this happened for a reason, you may not understand the reason, but the acceptance of that it happened for a reason, and this understanding that your kids are still alive, when you can walk through those 2 hurdles, it makes this whole process of reconnecting with your children on a different level, and helping you to understand that it's not a loss. It is a movement through, or a transition to, a better state for both you and your children.
Well said. How about you, Beth? Try to beat that.
I'm not sure I want to. I think, though, I'd like to add is that there is a trend. I mean, we've now been doing this, it's 25 years. And for me, I do sometimes want to think of my children as Jess and Josh, these little 9 and 7-year-old, but they are great spirit. They are doing amazing things. And it's interesting because we were doing a workshop with some mediums, and they were opening up. There was 3 mediums in the front of the room, and all of a sudden they're like, I think we have your kids. And they started talking about the kids as little kids. And I said, I said, Jess and Josh, I'm okay with them seeing you who you truly are now, great spirits. And it was like, all three of them, all of a sudden their eyes went, and they just felt them and saw them as great spirits. And I was like, that's how I see my kids. I mean, yes, I still in my, remember them opening up Christmas presents and all of that, but yet to know that we are here on this planet to do great stuff and help people and their amazing spirits is also very comforting to me.
Wow, I'm getting cold chills all over my body from that one. And the important thing for people to remember is it's both. I mean, they'll be your kids in a
Mhm.
very real way for eternity. That is stored in, in the 0 point field. So that's real. In addition, they are also great spirits. And yeah, when you said see what they really look like, I could already start seeing some color and feel some energy. So, and then that's one way parents can move from deep grief over apparently senseless tragedy to deep gratitude for, oh my God, we had these special ones with us for this many years. Well, so share with me, please, and then I would ask you to share about the drunk driver and your aftermath with him. But what is your knowing about there being a meaning and a timing behind something even as apparently senseless as a child's passing?
We've talked about this a lot, and it's one of the things that really moved us along in the beginning, that idea of the acceptance that this was supposed to happen. And just briefly, we were on our way to the mall and Beth had a spot on her shirt and she wasn't sure if she should say something, so we should go back and change it. She didn't. We got to the stop and go lights. We were the second or third car there. We were stopped. There was a squad car coming from the other direction with his lights on. He turned and went. Everybody else moved through the intersection. I paused for a second, then pulled out. Then he hit us. At the accident scene, there was a off-duty police officer that just happened to be walking through the intersection that was available to help. There was a husband and wife doctor that were in a car across the intersection. So they were able to get out and render assistance immediately to our kids. There was a Flight for Life helicopter that was already in the air that was rerouted to us. So, there's numerous other things that took place, but all of this stuff had to happen just in the right exact sequence in order for us to be there and for that drunk driver to hit us. And that squad car that turned was responding to a domestic violence occurrence with that drunk driver. And he was able to watch the accident in his rearview mirror and radio it in immediately. So all of these things just at the accident scene were there. And as we reflected back on them, it started us to begin to understand that this had to have happened for a reason, to have all of these things line up. And then the events that took place in the preceding months after that just helped to solidify that.
Well, and don't forget, a huge piece of information was when the funeral director showed up at our home on Sunday afternoon or no, it was probably Monday or Tuesday. They passed on Sunday or transitioned on Sunday. Showed up with the death certificate, and on Jessica's death certificate, it said it looked very similar to her birth date. And I said, it was her death date, or how old she was at the time of death. And I said, why do you have her birth date in for her right here for her death date? Or why do you have her birth date here? And he says, well, that's her death date.
That's how old she was when she died.
Correct. So she was born, so I'll try to say that it's really kind of cool. She was born September, which is 24th, 1989. She was, when she passed, 9 years old. So that matches the year of 89, to me, so she was 9 years, 9 months, and 24 days old.
Wow.
So, oh God, I got goosebumps. So that literally happens once in your life, one day. And she died. So to me, it was just like, there's proof that this was meant to be. I don't know. It stuck with me. I saw it. And I thought that was like, wow.
Good. And my famous movie that depicts what you were saying, how everything had happened just the right way for this outcome, is the Curious Case of Benjamin Buttons with Brad Pitt, who some people mistake with me. So just watch the movie, the Curious Case of Benjamin Buttons, and they do a beautiful job of showing how all that had to fall into place. And by the way, accepting, because I understand that some parents who watch this are still very recent. They're angry and they're like, I'm not
Right.
going to accept this, because they maybe think that means you're not caring or you condone a drunk driver. None of that, but accepting serves everyone. And
Right. And we always say, I mean, this is 25 years, don't compare. It hasn't always been, it's not been easy.
Mhm.
We had to walk the same journey.
yeah, so we're going over a little, but it's worth it. Tell us, please, just briefly, the aftermath with the drunk driver, which I felt led to ask about and before we started.
So he was sentenced to basically two 20-year prison terms for 20 years for each child. He served 13 years, 13 or so years in jail, and then, excuse me, he's out on parole for the rest of those 20 years and then 20 years for the other one. We never put a lot of energy or effort into him, hating him, anything like that. We just said that's no reflectance on who our kids were. But in December, we received a letter in the mail from the court system, because our kids are considered murdered, and so we get notified when there's any change with his state. And so we're going to shorten this up a little bit, the story up a little bit. The long and short of this was, we weren't supposed to get that letter, but that letter prompted Beth to look up the drunk driver.
David Ramish, yeah. So I looked him up. I never Googled him. We really didn't put energy into him. And he became a minister. And we had heard that as well from the DA's office and stuff. But yeah, he became a minister, and he's helping people in Iowa. So after 13 years, he's been a minister now, 6 years. So we were very thrilled about that. He's helping others.
And so Beth started to think about this process of the soul contracts and the minister, David, being part of this, not only with Beth and I and Jess and Josh, but he had to be part of it as well. And so
light bulb moment.
We made the decision to go to Iowa and to meet with him and to forgive him and let him know. We didn't really think that it was his fault, and we thought that if we would forgive him and let him know what we've done with our life since then, it would enable him to be able to help other people. And
we just felt that he must have so much dense energy, in his chakras, in his heart chakra, just for all the pain he caused us. And I'm like, just think if we remove that or help that to move, just think of the people he can help. And again, this is 25 years later, but
right.
We've been blessed with 3 more children. And when my children are 24, 22, our children, 24, 22, and 19, they're supposed to be on this earth. And so this has been a lot of time to digest this 24/7, and so it just felt right.
And as a result of that, we weren't going to tell or talk to anybody about it, but our kids gave us such an amazing sign that same day during the process of forgiving him, that we ended up starting to tell that story as well. And it just, for us, it had a profound impact.
Because we really thought we just went for David, to help him. And then we got a gift. So,
right. Yeah. Well, that's going to help so many people. Well, thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, boy. Carol, you are up next, please. Tell us about David's life and passing. And when you start speaking, you'll be on the screen.
There we go. I'm still a technophobe, so I
No
hope
problem.
it goes okay. Um, yes, his name was David Kyle. His name is David Kyle. He was our firstborn, only son. And from the start, I just knew this was a different and amazing kid, which I think the more I listen to Shining Light Parents, it exemplifies all of our kids. But Kyle was so bright and inquisitive and creative. He was always dreaming. We found out when he was about 12, he was gifted in art, ended up with a full scholarship to Columbus College of Art and Design, BFA in illustration. He became a footwear designer, traveled to China, the Dominican Republic, and he was also an entrepreneur. He started his own line of Ohio State boots and clogs and got him licensed, and you never knew what he was going to do next. He and I actually wrote a children's book together. I wrote it, he illustrated it, and I think we still have about 100 copies left if anybody wants a copy of that. But yeah, but the thing about Kyle was he was always sort of bigger than life. He was always the life of the party. And I remember so many Sunday dinners over at our house with my mom, my daughter, her fiance, and my husband and me. And by the end of the dinner, we were all on the floor laughing hilariously. I mean, he could have been on Saturday Night Live. And I called him my John Belushi child. He could imitate any accent from any country. He could imitate any celebrity.
Mm.
And I remember my 4-year-old grandson at the time, every time Kyle would walk in the room, this 4-year-old would jump up, Uncle Kyle, and he would go, Nephew Cam. I mean, there was a bromance like you wouldn't believe. So when he transitioned, it was like, no, this doesn't compute. I cannot accept the fact that he is just gone. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. I read a quote recently, and I think it said something like, where the light is brightest, the shadows are deep. And along with Kyle's many gifts, he had a shadow side. He had mental health struggles, and but he did pretty well. He was very supportive of him, and he was just amazingly resilient. He would get knocked down, he would get back up and kind of dust himself off and keep going, reinvent himself until COVID hit. And of course, we all know what happened. Not only did people die of COVID, but I call it COVID collateral now. We had a shelter in place mandate, if you recall, and he was so paranoid and worried that he would get the germ and then he would transfer it to my husband and me. We're both heart patients, so he was always concerned about us. But he ended up isolating himself and self-medicating. And so we started learning about COVID in February, March of 2020. By April, we just realized he was spiraling down, and we tried to help him. But we found him, or Dean found him in his apartment in May, and this COVID thing was just too much for him. Of course, he wasn't alone, and later I learned that there were 93,000 souls that died of overdose that year. And so he definitely wasn't alone, but yeah. And like all parents, we were just shattered beyond comprehension.
Sure.
So that was how he passed.
Okay. So how did you discover helping parents heal, and how did they help you initially?
Yeah. When I look back at that year, 2020, I have the spottiest memory. I have some things that are
Sure.
crystal clear, some things I don't remember. And I don't really remember exactly when I saw Helping Parents Heal or how I found them. But I do remember sitting in my car one afternoon talking to a caring listener. And it was like she was an angel from heaven.
Mm.
I didn't know how to, put one foot in front of the other. And she had also had a son that passed. And so she talked to me about her son. I talked to her about mine. And I think that's where my healing started. And then I went to the website and I just dug in. I looked at every video I could. I learned about Dr. Schwartz and you, Dr. Pitstick, and I just started feeling better and better. Also at this time, Kyle started, he came on like gangbusters with his signs. And I remember, every time I would get a sign from him, I would type it up. And I don't know if you remember, but I sent you like this epistle of 70 things that had happened. And
Right.
you went back and you said, he is one determined, energetic spirit.
Yes.
So I truly don't know where I'd be now if it weren't for helping parents heal.
Yeah. And then you started your own group, last year? Tell us about how you're serving and what you consider to be strengths of your group.
So with all the signs that Kyle was bombarding us with, not just me, but his whole family, and with becoming familiar with helping parents heal, I got, I guess, almost giddy. It was like, oh my gosh, this changes everything. There is an afterlife. My kid is still here. And I
Right.
just thinking, other parents need to know this. I need to spread the great news and help lessen the suffering. And so I think I contacted Elizabeth and she said, well, you're only 6 months out. Let's wait a couple of years. And I'm like, okay. So I waited a couple of years and then I contacted her again. And it's like, okay. So I went through the training and our first meeting was last April. So we're still relatively new, but I have been blown away by, everybody is so savvy. This group has so much talent and so much passion and compassion. We have one woman who started a podcast, Where Did They Go? And you're familiar with that because she
Right.
interviewed you. We have another couple who started a foundation, the Reed Foundation, and Reed was their son's name. And they made an acronym, Reaching Everyone in Distress. They help
Nice.
people who are suffering from addiction. They're doing amazing work. And my jaw is just on the floor at every
Nice.
meeting.
Yeah. That's Columbus, Ohio, by the way, folks. So what have you learned, Carol, over the last several years about how to optimally sense Kyle's presence?
Actually, he doesn't give me a choice. He is kind of in my face. And although, the best way that he communicates with me is auditorily. I hear him in my head. And I asked him the other day, I said, why don't you show your face? Because I've never seen you. And he said, Mom, you would probably have a heart attack. You have heart problems, so I don't want to give you a heart attack. It's like, well, yeah, okay, that's cool.
Mm.
But I guess it's just my acceptance right off the bat, even before Kyle transitioned throughout my life. I have had encounters. My sister passed in 1969. And so our family has been to mediums. So it wasn't like a brand new thing to me. So I think it's my openness that I believed right away, like this is really something. And
Yeah. So you think that expedites it, your openness to it, makes it easier for you to detect his presence.
right. I think you need to, first of all, somehow get it in your heart and know deep down that this is real.
Mhm.
And so I just kind of let go and let Kyle manifest whatever he wants to manifest. I have asked on many occasions could you please give me a sign? And this is the sign that I want you to give me. How arrogant is that? But more often than not, he actually comes through, so.
You know that old saying, let go and let God. I thought you were going to say, let go and let Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, I can and I will, but that's what I do.
That's funny. And by the way, people watching this, you may notice various parents laughing, and we are laughing about things. And first of all, it's a lot higher energy than crying. Secondly, it appreciates the the French philosopher, and I'm spacing his name right now. He said, God is like a comedian playing to an audience that's too afraid to laugh. And so, yeah, when you realize no one really dies, this time on earth, a blink of an eye and the span of eternity, we're all part of God. We set this up for good reasons, that only 25% of our energy of each of us needs to be on earth, and the rest, in other words, all you parents, you may well and probably are with your kids right now in another time, space, slice of life. So when you realize all that, yeah, it is pretty funny and nothing to fear. So tell us, please, over the last going on 4 years, what are 3 things you've learned that you'd like to share with other parents?
Do I have time for a story? And I'll try to keep it brief.
Sure.
But the first thing that I would like parents to deeply know is, well, let me start at the beginning. Let's see. I wasn't going to say this because it's a little bit long. Let's see. Okay, I had a phone reading with Mark Anthony, and it was March 22nd, 2022. And one of the things Mark says in his book, I think it's called The Afterlife Frequency, his newest one, was that physics has proven that there's no time, that time is not linear. And we earthlings just can't wrap our heads around it, but it's actually true. So just keep that in mind. Mark gave me so many jaw-dropping bits of information that I was just blown away. I mean, it was no other explanation, as Suzanne Giesman calls them, NOEs. He was giving me one NOE after another. But then he said, do you know a Michael who's passed? And I said, I know 3 Michaels, but they're all alive and kicking. And Mark said, well, just keep that on the back burner. And so I jotted it down, and at the end of our reading, I just stuck it in my notes and put it away and didn't even think about it. Until it was March 22nd, 2023, we got a text from our good friends that their son, Michael, had suddenly passed away. And I wasn't thinking about the date or anything at the time. I just remember saying to Kyle in my head, Kyle, please send me a message and let me know that Michael has crossed and he's with you and he's okay. And I got immediately blasted in my brain, Mom, check your notes. I thought, check my, oh, and I ran upstairs and got the file. And there it was, March 22nd, 2022, a year to the day. And he had said that, Mark told me that Kyle had said, Michael rowed the boat ashore and he's here and I'm here and we're both fine. And I had typed that in my notes.
Nice.
Well, my mistake was that I was so excited and I thought, oh, I can go to these people and I can tell them the great news that their son is fine. He's with Kyle. He's alive. He's with you. And I did that. And I was just expecting them to be so comforted and healed. And no, they looked at me like I had 2 purple heads or something. And I thought, whoops. I gave them the information about helping parents heal. We're still friends. We still go out, but I have to respect their wishes, and the way that they grieve. Everybody's different, but that's one thing I really wish parents would understand deeply, that their their child is still there, and some parents you can help, and some you just hope that they will.
Well, and also another takeaway from that, Carol, sorry to interrupt, is that, for parents to know that even when you tell your highest truth, not everybody's going to get it or appreciate it or agree with it. So you may want to be discerning about who you share that with. And so another thing you'd like to share with other parents?
Let's see. The other thing is, I hope that they will just blow the guilt out of their guilt bag. I have seen, and especially dads, I've had dads come to our meetings and they pour out their heart, which is wonderful. And my husband comes to every meeting, so he kind of helps the guys along. But there's so much anger and there's so much guilt. And I wish they would know none of this is your fault. Every parent loves their child deeply, but I find that this is a problem, and it's been a problem even with everybody. With me, sometimes it's the shoulda, coulda, woulda, but I usually can just slough that off. But I find that especially dads have
Yeah,
problems.
and I should mention there is a fathers or helping fathers heal group,
Yeah.
which you can see on the website, helpingparentsheal.org for dads. So, so tell us, please, about what are your beliefs about there being a meaning and a timing to a child's passing, even when, from a human perspective, it seems so senseless and tragic.
Yeah, and I still kind of grappling with the concept. It feels, I mean, there were signs looking back that Kyle and I were going to be taking this journey together. I knew almost from the beginning that we were soulmates. Somehow we're just, and I think we've known each other in previous lives. So that part, but it's hard to wrap my head around it.
Sure.
Sometimes I feel like an ant trying to understand how a computer works. It's like the grand picture is just so much grander than my little brain will ever understand until I'm there as well. But, I believe in the grand scheme of things, when tragedy strikes, your angels, your guides, the universe, your higher power, they all converge to help you counteract the tragedy by somehow spreading more light and even more peace in the world, because I have seen it, especially with this group, that, I mean, just think of all the projects and all the things that are going on and how much suffering is lessened because we had this tragedy. So, and I was reading, I could tell one more gobsmacking thing. I read, I forget which book, but it's Elizabeth and Suzanne Giesman and Irene took a vacation with their husbands, and they realized their shining light kids took the vacation with them. They were there during the whole vacation, and they said, our shining light kids, and I think you mentioned it at the beginning, they are with us and they're helping us and they're guiding us. Well, I think it was about the fourth meeting of our group, and we were just kind of getting to know each other. Well, one woman walked in the door and she said, you'll never believe this. And I said, believe what? And she said, I had a reading with Mark Anthony last week, and he brought my son through. And then he said, there's another young man or another man standing here, and his name is Kyle. And she said, I didn't even think of your son until I got home, until we were done with the reading. And she said, I think that's Carol's son. And then he said, Kyle is telling me two more names, Dean. And my husband was there, and he raises his hand. He goes, I'm Dean, and Don. And Dean said, oh, that's my dad. So Kyle apparently was giving all these names so that we would know, it really is Kyle. And Dean said, yeah, my dad was Don Kyle, I'm Dean Kyle, and then we had David Kyle.
Wow.
And but our kids,
Okay.
our kids in our little group are together.
Well, thank you for that. And, that's a great answer. When you look at the impact, when you look at the blessings, there is some meaning to it. And by the way, Mark, Anthony, and I were on a panel discussion today together. So it's
Oh.
interesting to keep bringing up his name. He's one of the best. And so thank you again. Awesome. Lewis, if you would get ready, please. And while you're coming on, thanks to April, who typed in the chat box, Voltaire was the French philosopher. I could not remember who said, God is like a comedian playing to an audience that's too afraid to laugh. Voltaire. All right, Lewis, you are up.
Hello.
Hello, tell us about your Joe, his life and passing, please.
Okay. Joseph is the youngest of 4 children. Joe was born deaf in 1990, and it was a home birth. And even in 1990, a hospital birth, they didn't have hearing tests for infants at that time. So it took us till he was a year and a half to actually have his ear tested and find out. It was confusing at first because he could hear some noises, but he could hear nothing in the voice range. So that led us on a whole new journey, a delve into deaf culture and the deaf community and learning sign language. Our whole family, including some of our extended family, were learning sign language to support Joe. So that was kind of like how it started out. Joe was a smart person, and he was very active in youth group, in church, and school things. He also had a difficult side, which led to a lot of adventures. And because of his deafness, he went to a deaf school, which is about an hour away from here, American School for the Deaf. But we got into the world of the IEPs and all and going to school board meetings and those kinds of things. And because Joe had a difficult side, then there was behavior issues and things like that. So his days at school, we would be waiting for the phone to ring and find out what the next episode was.
Right.
And just so there was that aspect to his life. I just got to look at my notes for a second.
That's fine.
All right. So one of the notes I have here is that at Joe's wake, his school counselor came through the line and told us that Joe was the best imp he ever knew.
A lovable imp.
Yes. Let's see. I told a little bit about Joe's different activities, and that's and so he was active in many different things, including Boy Scouts, and so that's going to speak to some of the questions later on how we honor him and keep his memory alive. Joseph was so after high school, he did attend a culinary arts school, and we joked that he did that because he liked lighting fires and things like that. It wasn't long after that he got into some trouble at home, and so in June of 2010, I basically threw him out of the house because I discovered he had been stealing money from us, and my wife was away on a trip, and I told him that he had to be out of the house before she got home because he wasn't going to be irritating my wife anymore. So he moved to my brother's house, which is a mile or so away, and lived there. And he had a work situation going on, so he could do an internship or an externship to finish his schooling. He was not successful with that. He seemed to have some kind of self-sabotage kind of a thing going on.
Right?
Late, so that was in June. In December 28th of 2010, Joe entered the next life by suicide. And it was at my brother's house. So my brother found him and we were called. So that's a little bit about Joe's life and a little bit how he entered the next life.
Sure. Well, thank you for sharing that. And, I can tell it's still painful, of course. I'll bet you 25% at least of the kids of parents I've interviewed so far passed by suicide, either accidental or overdose or intentional. So it's so common, and we need to address the underlying factors for that. And I encourage people to see article number 4 at my website, soulproof.com, because it addresses a number of factors that parents worry about and, ways to heal even that. So thank you for sharing that, Lewis. How did you discover helping the parents heal, and how did they help you initially?
Okay, so we heard about it from another grief group that we were involved in, and it was so that would have been like when you were getting ready for the first conference, because that was my first knowing about helping parents heal, that there was going to be a conference. And I was further excited about it because one of the mediums that you had there, George Anderson, I had read his book, and so I was quite excited about the whole idea of helping parents heal, the spirit world and mediumship.
Good. And have you attended their father's group any?
I have not.
Okay. All right. So tell us about how you're serving now and what you consider to be strengths of your group.
All right. So after a little while after the conference started the group, and so a quick story about that. It's a lot about openness and how we can just be aware of our shining light children, helping bring things together. One of the things we did a few years ago on Christmas Eve, a friend called us and asked us to call this couple that we didn't know because their son had recently died of suicide. So on Christmas Eve, my wife cold called this couple. They didn't know we were going to call them to talk to them about our children and grief. And that couple has joined our group. And it turns out in years and years ago, the wife's father was good friends with my father.
Oh my.
So there's all those connections that we talk about are there.
Wow, what a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So what have you learned over the years, Lewis, about sensing Joe's presence? How's that work for you?
Sensing Joe's presence. Right after Joe died, I think it was the first night. So this is December in New England. I laid down in bed and I couldn't sleep, but in my hearing, I could hear the sounds of summertime outside, like crickets and katydids and other critters that make noises in the summertime. And it wasn't just like an idea of the sound, it was like the sensation of actually hearing it. And that went on for some time. And every once in a while it happens again. And so I have to check if it happens when I'm waking, right in between sleep and wake or something. I have to sit up and think about what time of year it is, and if the crickets are really talking to me, or it's Joe. So I think it's Joe, whether I'm hearing it out of season or whether it's actual season for those things. That's
That's interesting. And my my initial thought when you started sharing that, even before you told it all, was that was Joe's way of saying he can hear now.
Yes, and I
Yeah.
hadn't thought of that. What?
Yeah.
Oh boy! Wow, thank you.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thought, huh?
Because sometimes we wonder, like, if how he could communicate, but we think that because he's on the next world, that the healing happens in many ways, and so his soul would be a whole and healed being.
Yeah. So what are some things you've learned over the last 13 years now that you'd like to share with other parents, especially
Well, part of it is when we talk about the duality of life, like yin and yang, sad and happy side by side, because our grief journey can be so hard, but if we cannot make it a mutually exclusive thing, like, okay, so I'm dealing with this, but I can still leave some room for some laughter and some happiness, even during the grief.
Beautiful. Yes.
Another thing is to not, and I've seen this sometimes in our group, and I've led people to different direction, to not get wrapped up in the small world energy of the physical presence and things that are going on in our culture. Because our spirit energy is so great, and the universe has so many possibilities for us that it's just too short of a trip here on Earth to worry about the things that we can't do anything about.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Number 3, another one is the part about how our children don't want us to suffer. And again, to the suicide, it doesn't really matter how our children died. It's a way for them to move from this life to the next.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's their ticket back home.
Graduation.
Wow. Boy, these are all powerful ones. Anything else you want to share with parents, Joe? You obviously learned a lot and thought about this.
Let me see. What else? I'm not coming up with another one at the moment.
Okay, that's fine. Kind of put you on the spot there. So finally, if you would share, please, about your belief about how do you look at this, if there's a meaning and a timing to a child's passing?
All right. So, right, to carry on and to honor Joe, one story I'd like to share with you. Back when we started sign language classes, when Joe was 1.5 years old, another family in the next town over joined us for the classes, and their son and our son became best friends. So Joe's best friend's name is Brian. So Brian and I have met once a week, every week, for all of these 13 years to share in our grief and to support each other.
Oh, nice.
And often in our grief as parents, I get maybe a little tiny bit short-sighted because and Brian has mentioned this to me, that about his grief as being Joe's best friend, and how his best friend can't be here to be like an uncle to Brian's children, and other things like that. So every once in a while, I get a little glimpse of a perspective from Brian on how he grieves Joe's death. Another story about Brian. Brian, when he was a senior in high school, he had cancer. So he's a cancer survivor, and he recently told me that when he was going through all of that, it was Joseph that taught him how to not be afraid of death.
Beautiful. Wow.
And
Oh
Mark-
my, yeah, you got me on that one too. Well, Louis, I really appreciate you showing your emotion. You know, sometimes it's tough for men to do that. And so you're going to provide an example for other dads to say, you know, it's okay to get teared up. It's okay to be touched. I mean, it's even more of a man. And thank you for those two examples of how you found meaning in Joe's passing. Excellent. Thank you again.
You're welcome.
To all of our parents tonight, again, thank you so much. It's such an honor. We appreciate so much. This has become a highlight of my life, and I learned so much. Lynn, what would you like to share before we wrap it?
Just thank you to all of our participants tonight and all of you that came on to be a part of this wonderful evening. We just love you guys and thank you, Mark.
My pleasure. And